Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Welcome back. I hope everyone's still tuned in. We just finished a wonderful panel discussion about content marketing, and we're going to have a brand new presentation coming up shortly. Again, I will be your host for today and for tomorrow, again, on the track Powerful Brands. Now, again, we encourage you guys to actively participate today as our knowledge partner Manning will be offering 5 lucky attendees the chance to win the ebook Demand Forecasting Best Practices. So please comment, interact, and leave questions, and then we can obviously share that with our speaker today. Now, speaking of our speaker, Lohi, right here, is with us. She is very good at inculcating and merging cultures. She loves to think outside the box, learn new things, and help businesses go from ideation to branding and profitability. Lohi has a vested interest in women's empowerment and in the transformation of small businesses. Now, Lohi's talk will focus on how we can leverage neuromarketing in the brand economy where emotions are now the currency of branding. Louis Talk will help you understand dynamic questions worth asking, the new way of leveraging data validation, and how to play the brand game in an ever evolving age. Now, without any further ado, Lohi, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Maria. Um, I just need 1 second to set this up. Uh, can you guys see my screen, maybe?
We're not able to see your screen just yet, but okay, we can.
Oh, thank you. All right. I will just start off by saying welcome to everyone. And like Maria said, it would be really a good pleasure if everyone listening to the talk can just share something really unique about your culture. So, something that makes your culture stand out. Like my profile said on the website, I'm from a country that has over 500 different cultures. And so, starting out in marketing and branding, that really helped me a lot because it helped me understand that something that is acceptable and interesting in one culture is 100% annoying and reverting in another culture. And so all of this information is data. But one thing I've realized is that over the past few years, brand strategies have heavily relied 100% on data analytics. So when people have data, they jump right straight into the strategy, into creating the strategy and then implementing. But what we all need as brand and marketing managers is the ability to see beyond data gathered. So what gives good brands the leverage in the brand economy? How do you figure out what the cost of your brand is? And so the question that we need to ask as brand managers and as marketing managers is the simple straightforward question. What is the currency of branding? It is no longer just good data. It's no longer just about good strategy. It's no longer just about greatly optimized channels. A whole lot of us are doing everything right and correctly, but we're not seeing the intended and desired results that we want. And so today, my talk is going to help you figure out how to use the currency of branding. And what is the currency of branding? When it comes to brand, we are in an intangible economy, and that goes without saying. All brands are ideas. So whether you're branding an actual item that is a product or you're branding a person or a company, whatever it is, it's an idea. And at that point, it's intangible. You do have the challenge of communicating the idea of that product, of that person or that company to a certain target audience. And usually, what we do is take the information about what the people think, about what the people want, and just immediately translate it into strategy without going beyond the data that we have. So, because of the intangibility of brands, the fact that brands are idea, it is important to measure brands accurately. And if we measure brands based on data alone, we will completely miss the core of branding. Because if you're not measuring your brand properly, how can you accurately cost your brand and understand how it translates into purchasing power in the presence of your target audience? How can you gauge performance and how can you forecast how your brands will perform? I mean, a whole lot of us have lots of strategies that cater to communicating without necessarily actually communicating. And so today, the currency of branding is emotions. In the brand economy, the currency that actually helps your brand or your product to sell and make the desired impact that you want is emotions. And so you have to first understand what emotion is guiding your target audience, what emotion is making them buy, what emotion is making them commit to your product or to your service. And as human beings, we do have a wide range of emotions. It goes from laughing to excitement to being intrigued and to being amazed by a certain thing, all the way down to greed, to envy, to jealousy, to dread, to compassion. And in the middle of the spectrum of emotion is fulfillment, is satisfaction. And so, how do you put all of these emotions to play? How do you optimize all of these emotions instead of optimizing just channels? How do you create great content that actually communicate and actually sell to the emotions of people so that you are really participating in the brand economy? I put up the best of my six collections when it comes to emotions regarding branding. And these are my top six. I have a whole talk that goes further down into all of these emotions. But it's interesting to know that quickly laughter, excitement, joy can quickly change to greed, shame, pride, envy, compassion, and dread. And the truth is, every customer who buys, every customer who commits to your brand, every customer who suddenly becomes connected with the brand that you create, moved all the way either from laughter, from need to one of these items. And it is at one of these points that they eventually settled for your product or your brand or the service that you're creating. If we look at known brands like Coca Cola, for instance, they have come a long way. But today, there is a lot of information out there, a lot of documentaries that actually tell you it is hideous and dangerous to drink Coke. But the truth is, it's one of the most consumed drinks in the world. There are countries that have report and data about diabetes that they can directly link with the consumption of Coca-Cola. But today, it's still a very homey brand. And that's because they've done their work and have created a level of connectivity to the fact that when people think about having a meal or when people think about something, the first thing they think about is Coke. You'd find people say things like, I can't, I just drink bottles and bottles of Coke. In one way, when it moved from excitement all the way to pride. And that's the kind of journey you want to create for your target audience. That's the kind of journey you want to create for everyone who is interacting with your brand. You want to move them from the point of, I don't know what to make, I don't know what decision to go for, I don't know which product or brand to select, to these guys are my homies. These are the people I want to keep buying. And a typical example again is your relationship with toothpaste. How did you decide for the toothpaste you currently used? Whatever the decision was, in every time you went back to the grocery shop, there were lots of toothpastes on the shelf, but you still went for that same brand that you have always used. And so my next slide is going to focus on how brands and companies use neuromarketing, and this is a channel and an aspect of marketing that I got interested in a few years ago, to understand effectively how brands and companies and products and services use emotions to make people believe that they made the choice that they made. And so, neuromarketing, like we all know, is 100% based on emotions. And it is often used to determine what a target audience responds to. And the truth is, what brands are doing now is that they actually use neuromarketing to manipulate the decisions that the target audience makes. For instance, look at this ad on the left: manager special, 30% off, 50% off. And the little tiny note under there says, look for specially marked packages and save. So this whole ad takes a whole lot of things into consideration. And if you're not looking closely, you will not recognize that that's what the brand, the shop, the grocery shop is doing to get you to buy more meat. And so when you look at this, the first thing you're thinking is not that you already have meat in your fridge or you don't have anything on your weekly menu that needs meat. The first thing you're thinking is, this is the manager is giving off XYZ percentage. I need to save. It makes sense for me to buy at this point when it is 30% off or 50% off, then wait to buy later on when the price is back. And the truth is, if this shop goes one step further and says, offer ends in 2 days, I believe this whole shelf will clear out in just a few hours. And so, in one hand, the target audience believes that they made that decision, but it was 100% neuromarketing right there. It's the shop using colors, using certain words, and using certain items that make them feel special about themselves and also make them realize that they need the product without necessarily needing the product. And the other picture is pretty much the No Need to Fly campaign that Germany did. And what they had was create a picture of a place in Germany and aligned it with a picture of another place someplace else that people would want to go. And the simple trick is they popped out the fact that you can go by train for 19 euros to, for instance, Kromlau, and then you have to spend 1,750 euros to go to Gilling. Let's assume you live in Munich. And they did this for a bunch of cities. So, what are they selling here? They're showing you that for you to, why spend value here when you can save a lot of money and have the same experience here? Now, you would think that this is a logical process, but it really isn't. Because at that point, your emotions, greed, greed comes to the forefront. I can say this. Pride. If I do this, I am smart. And so it's the thing and the trick that brands that have experienced and understood the currency of emotions in the brand economy put into play. And this is where you want to take your brand. This is where you want to take your services. And so the next thing that you would want to consider in the process of experiencing the brand economy and optimizing the currency of emotion is key questions you should be asking. And some of the questions that you should be looking at is: one, what is the value of marketing to the CEO and the team? So, in the course of my research, when I did a couple of or talks around neuromarketing in some conferences that I've spoken at, one major question that comes up is: how do you communicate to the CEO with regards to emotions and get the CEO to buy into what marketing is doing? And because a challenge that most marketing managers and officers have is to communicate the fact that marketing is an investment, it's not a cost center. And that's quite challenging. But the truth is, you need to understand first what guides your CEO's perspective. so you can speak their language fluently. And that's exactly the same way that you treat your target audience. At that point in time, your CEO is your target audience. And so you need to sell what you are doing to your CEO so that he begins to value the relevance of marketing and the 100% language that CEO speaks is value. So XYZ percentage increase, XYZ percentage value to business objective, as opposed to saying we have XYZ links available and we receive XYZ clicks. They don't understand that language. And it's the same with your team, because the first set of people you need to buy into what you're doing is your company. Once you have your business and your colleagues supporting your branding initiatives, then you're already at least 50% done with the job, because they will escalate whatever content you release externally. And the next question is, before I point that out, usually when marketing officers arrange the strategy for the brand, the crisis session of the strategy only focuses on media crisis, on issues and challenges that could come from bad press. Everyone fails to consider the fact that there is an important impact that global pandemics can actually hit on the brand. And so, in your crisis management section of your brand strategy, the key question to ask is, how are we organized to cash in on a global crisis, for instance? And I don't need to go into all of the details about how brands interacted during COVID-19. I'm pretty sure you had your own fair share of experience with the struggling and the part where everyone had to struggle to balance and get their legs together. But the first question to ask is, what does my CEO think about the brand that we have? What does the team, the colleagues, and the company, what is the perspective of the company about the marketing of the brand? What are we sufficiently organized for a global pandemic? Then what emotions, the last and the most important question, which then applies to your target audience, is what are the emotions am I triggering in my target audience? How does that emotion lead to conversions? So instead of this question, usually what we ask is, how do I get conversions? But the question we should be asking is, what emotions trigger conversions? And here are some items to consider when creating these strategies, so that you actually understand the emotions that trigger responses in your target audience, so that you can actually go beyond the data all the way to the particular connection that your target audience is looking to achieve. And the first item is colors. Look at these two buttons. One of them is blue, one of them is red. Blue has a the ability or the quality of making you feel like you can think about this. It's easy, it's cool. There's the element of trust. I can think about this and work with them for a while before I make a decision. But red gets your heart beating faster. It kind of like prompts you to decide now. It makes you click on the decision right now. And that's exactly what you want to do. So using colors to actually align and sync with your branding is very important. Now, the truth is, most people say we have a brand color and we have a tone we want to maintain. And so all of your CTA buttons are one color. All of the items that you have in your click list, in your leads gen plan, is all one color, and it's not really going to help. So what you need to do is identify, where is the color scale? Where are you? Where is your primary brand color in this? Let's assume you're working with this emotional triggers, this color scale that I have on the screen. How can you tilt between a not so dark red and a not so dark purple? If you want your company to be perceived as an eco company, one that supports environmental policies, you have to go for green. If you want people to jump and be excited and be energetic about an offer that you're making, you go for red. And that's exactly what sales do. Remember the color from the shop where the managers offer. It was all yellow and red. They could have used any other color, but it was all yellow and red because they need people to feel the urgency that 30% is not going to last forever, 50% is not going to last forever. And they needed people as well to see that this is a confidence campaign. You can trust us that these are good qualities, not because they're expired. It's the manager that is providing it. And those are the kinds of emotions that you want to subtly trigger in the minds of your target audience when you create your campaigns and your ads and your call to action buttons. Now, the truth is, brands that effectively use color combinations can convey a very specific message about their product and their services. Once again, you want to commit excitement. You need people to take action now. Red. You need people to trust. You need people to go with you on a long journey. You use colors like blue. You use colors like dark blue, purple. You need people to trust that your brand is very environmental friendly, and so they can invest in what you're doing. They can trust that you're not ruining the environment. You're one of the companies that say you go for green. And the other thing that we need to consider when creating brands that last and people connect with, that become a home brand with your target audience, is sound. How many of us actually have enjoyed the music between each of the sessions in this conference? I'm not gonna lie. Every time a session ends and the music comes up, I don't know, somehow I have moved. And so if you've loved the music in between sessions, just put it in the comment. Just type yes. And good job to the conference organizers for picking that collection. Now, if you look at the first picture on the slide, this guy has effectively told you that there is a sound he has created without necessarily telling you that he has created a sound that you have to listen to. And so there is a subtle creativity that comes from reading these contents. Does your brown sound like me? And so the curiosity and the need to want to see what the sound is, to want to hear what his voice is, or what the music it is that he's selling, is created without you necessarily spelling out the need for the client to go listen to the music. And this other picture is almost ironic because his face is not very excited, but the post, the color that is used, and again, the words that are used actually makes you want to listen to the song Humble on Spotify. And so apart from colors, sound, a very important part of the branding, of using branding to trigger emotion, is word. One, sound is emotional by nature. Like I said, every time I hear that sound that plays between the sessions, I start dancing. So, quick question. The first thing you need to do is then, how do I decide for the sound for my brand? You need to be deliberate. And what we do most times is, when we create content for the brand, we use we just pick a music or a sound that fits something that we're trying to push out there. However, it's going to help to be deliberate. Group your items into different categories and into different selections, and identify a specific sound that should go with a particular content or a particular group of content. And then you can use sound to elicit that emotion through your brand, so that when people hear that sound, they're quickly connected with the product, even if they don't need it. The truth is, at some point, they might be having a conversation with someone who needs that brand. And because of that emotional connection that you've created in their heart, your brand will be the first at the top of their list. And so, to words and how to phrase ads to capture attention. Use captivating words that trigger specific emotions. What do you want people to feel about the ad or the content when they read it? Design based on that emotion that you want people to create, not based on the data that you need them to consume from the ad. And so when you write your content, you write your captions, this picture, for instance, is already telling you to focus um, on on retention and not just lead generation. So if you keep doing lead generation without a process to actually retain the customers or the client, you're going to lose them at some point. And on this ad, what we were trying to do, this whole Lunch and Learn is a campaign to actually teach people. Is boring, and it's supposed to go long for hours where people will sit down and learn something for hours, but we needed to turn their attention to the fun that will be involved in the process. And so we called it tech chat, we called it good vibes. And so you need to think of words that play on the emotions of people to capture interest, besides the color and the sounds that you would be using to associate, that you'll be associating with your brand. And should your ad be aimed at triggering annoyance, which is something I've also noticed along the line. I have a small business that I worked with in Nigeria, and her idea was to use triggering scenarios to cause people to commit to her brand, and it worked like magic. So what she would do would be place a scene. Let's say you have issues with dishwashing, for instance, and she would use that particular scenario. And when you think about the fact that, okay, I really hate this chore, I really hate this, and so if you decide to go that way, you should be skilled enough to be able to channel that annoyance to conversion or to purchase. So understanding your brand and understanding, okay, which emotion can I effectively use to trade in the brand economy, so that when people feel that emotion, they can connect it directly to my brand. And the next thing I would like to talk about is the new relationship with data, how to leverage the data economy. To play the brand game when gathering and analyzing data from research, whether you do your research quarterly or yearly, here are a few things you need to look out for. The cost of your brand. To rephrase, analyze how effectively your brand is using emotion, and this should be deduced from the response of your audience. So, a simple example was something we did recently. We recently did a review of all of our content, and we found out that majority of our content that had the most engagement, the most conversions, were content that had to do with our employees. So anything that had our employees in them at all was performing way better than any other content we put out. And so what we did was to revisit the strategy and then build the content around people, because we understood that what our audience and the people who actually follow our brand wanted to see was connection. They wanted to see the people behind the solutions that we were offering. They wanted to see the people who were actually creating everything that we were doing. So we figured what were we triggering? Connection. And so that's the question you need to ask when creating your strategy. What exactly is creating the connection for my target audience? When I put out content, what is the data that I have? And if I have that data, why is it performing better? What did they click on? What page are they looking at? What is the most interactive content on social media? What are the kinds of subscriptions that we're getting? What are the kinds of links that are getting clicked? So this will help you form a perception of how your customers, your channel, your influencers, and every other person feel about your brand. So, what behaviors actually also indicate what people actually do instead of what people say they do? The typical example again is Coca-Cola. A lot of people say it is not healthy, but what do people actually do when it comes to Coca-Cola? And so you need to also be able to separate what people say from what they actually do, which is logic, data, to emotions and decisions. The last thing I will talk about today is what's the next step. The first thing I would want us to recognize is one, brand perception is relative, it's not absolute. And by relative, I mean it is fractional, it is temporary. This is why branding never stops. So, all of the research you do has to keep continuing, it has to keep going on. Just like Coca Cola, they are already a household brand, they already have a name, but they don't stop branding. They don't stop pushing out different content regarding their product. That's exactly what every organization that wants to become known and renowned has to do. You have to understand that people are fleeting. And just as fleeting as people are, that's exactly how brands are. They watch one content today and it's out of sight, out of mind. And so you have to keep branding. You have to keep branding. You have to keep putting your product in the faces of people through the colors, through the words, through the sound that you use. You have to keep reinventing your brand and influencing conversion by continually influencing the point of view through emotions. Because if you decide to keep changing the content just because you want to find what is working without necessarily deducting the emotions, all of your investments will keep going to waste and the CEO will keep calling the marketing department a cost center. And the next point is emphasize in bits, not generally. A typical example again is Coca Cola. They have a lot of product, but you don't see them mixing all of the product in one brand campaign. So they focus on Coke, and that's the brand item that gets the attention. They focus on another product that they have, and that's the brand item that gets the attention. So for you, emphasize your brands and your campaigns in bits. If you do employer branding, you do your employees, you have a content, separate all of the items and brand them independently. Recall I said brands are fractional. So your branding strategy has to be emphasized as well in bits. And the last thing that I would like to point out is setting a tone can increase the desirability of your brand. Set memorable tones using colors, using sounds, and using attractive words that people will not forget. These are the three important points that I would hope you'd be able to take home today. And last but not least, don't forget a brand is no longer what we tell the customers it is. That's years ago. It is what customers tell each other it is. And when customers tell each other about a certain brand, it is because that brand has impacted them on some level. It's because in they've connected that brand with a certain emotion that sticks with them. And so it is important for you to also realize that for you to get your brand to sit in the heart of your customers or your target audience, you need to attack their emotions. You need to target the emotions of your target audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lohi, for that very insightful presentation. I really enjoyed that. I have a few questions in mind because you touched on about colors and sounds and using emotions to really capture your audience. But I'm guessing it's a lot more effective when it comes to, for example, maybe in the beginning stage of the marketing funnel when you're trying to get the consumer to know more about your brand. But how do we use for example, emotions to drive to customer loyalty?
So I'll just first state that not every brand at this point in time is at the beginning point. So there are brands that are already established, but they're not exactly connected with their clients. And so it applies to all brands generally, irrespective of where you are in the status of the business, whether you're starting or you're building or you're really established and just trying to get more market share. So building loyalty is, like I said during the presentation, the first step is in getting all the data that you have, because data is what tells you what emotions are triggering conversions. And so once you can figure out the emotions, it is then that's when you target all of your messaging and your content to match that emotion, to sell to that emotion. Once you can sell to the emotion and get your target audience to connect with your brand on the level of that emotion, that's when brand loyalty starts. So take for instance the toothpaste example I gave. You probably used it when you were a kid, and so naturally, you just grew up and trusted that brand because your parents were using it. That brand did not do any direct marketing to you. But, and so it's exactly the same process. You need one person to talk about your brand. You need just one customer to introduce that brand to another customer. And like the closing comment says, it's not about what you say that your brand is. It's about what people say that your brand is. This is why influencer marketing is so widespread now, because they need people to say, okay, I use the product and it feels this way. I like it and I have constantly used it. It's the same thing we do when we go to buy a product and we scroll all the way down to look for reviews. We want to see how people felt about the product. And so that's really important to people. How do people feel? How do I feel about XYZ brand? So for you to create loyalty, you need to start targeting the feelings of your target audience, not what they can read based on what you put out there. It's really not about you. And that's the mistake most marketing managers do. You take the spotlight and create a strategy based on what you think is best for the brand. But the target audience are the heroes of your story. You're just the supporting character. And so, how do they feel? That's how to redirect the mindset to be able to create brand loyalty.
Right, that's good. There's one other question from the audience. Any golden advice you could share?
I think I mentioned it, but I'll just say it again. It's the research. So, for instance, when I get the story about what we did in my company, finding out that we looked at every content over a period of time, and the only content that we're getting the most commitments, the most engagements, the most reshares, the most likes were the content that involved our people. I could have just taken that as coincidence. All of us in the marketing team could just, but we sat down and had a workshop and started thinking about a way to brand the most, for lack of a better word, the most ridiculous content around our people. And so everything that we release has something to do with either one person in the team or with the group in the team. And so that is the one golden advice I would give. Find out what is the one thing that is clicking for your crowd, for your audience. And the truth is they have been talking. That's why we have so much data. Your target audience is always communicating what they want, what they need. They're always saying, so even if they say we want cheaper items, we want more ads, that's not exactly the emotion that is driving their decision. And so you need to go beyond the data. This is the golden advice. When you do your research, you do your analysis, and you have your meetings, your reviews before you start strategizing and planning, the first thing you need to do is, what exactly is the emotions that are at play when I look at all this data? Once your team can figure out the emotions, you would have better interactions, you would have better conversions, you would have much more marketing qualified leads as well to share with your sales team.
I think you touched on a really good point, and I like what you said earlier during your presentation, where you say sometimes we have to take into consideration not just what our consumers say, but what they actually do. So, say for example, a lot of consumers say, "Hey, I want to be more sustainable." In reality, do they actually follow through what they say they want to be? So
True.
as marketers, we need to be smarter, in the way that we communicate or in the way that we present our products, because sometimes it's just we tend to, as human beings, we want to belong. So we say we
Hmm.
want to do something because everybody else is doing it, but we're not actually doing it.
True.
So, and it's very good what you mentioned there. And just one last question from my side. I think it's easy to kind of bring emotions, or these days, a lot of the way I think that we would kind of interact with brands is online. How do we then bring emotions when our brand is more in the physical space? Not necessarily online, but we have a stronger physical presence. How do we evoke emotions?
Hmm. Basically, it's pretty much the same psychology, because whatever it is that you have, even if it's a pen. I mean, this is a Disney pen, and I got it. I specifically was looking for it when I went to Disneyland, and it feels childish, but I love it. And the specific reason is because of the shape that it has. And so that applies to every other person who has a tangible product. Recall the slide from the shop, the manager's discount. That's the hard, it's meat. It doesn't get more tangible than that. And so what they did there was to find a way to bring in colors and words that when the person reads it, they feel the need to do something right now. And so when you have a physical product, it's the same process. It's emotions that guide intangible products like services. I work in a tech company, and so we really don't have anything solid to sell. We have a very intangible items. It's the same process. A lot of people will tell you it's hard to brand software companies, but it's the same process because you're actually selling to people. And those people are going to make decisions based on an emotion, their ability to connect with your product. So if you have a tangible product, it's bringing in the ability to use colors, words. Are you going to run reels? Are you going to run ads? Then finds the sound that really hits it for them. Even if they're not going to engage with your product at that time, if they connect with that sound, they will not forget your product. And that's the start of brand loyalty. Recall how I said that the song in between sessions here, it's it's amazing that somehow unconsciously I actually wait and anticipate it. I can't tell you how many times I've shazammed the songs as they progress. And so this is exactly where you want to take your clients, whether you have a real life product or you have a product that people cannot hold with their hands. You just need to find the subtle things, words, colors, sounds, emotion. And there are all of those companies, I believe, that have things that are tangible are even great at it. Look at the Pampers company. All those ads they do with mothers and their babies and the babies smiling, they're just trying to evoke an emotion in you to help you trust that, oh my God, if that baby looks that good and that baby feels really comfortable, it's a really good product. I should be getting that for my child too. So it's really this whole brand economy, you just really need to go past everything you've known before. And okay, we need to be on this platform, we need to be selling to this, we need to be doing this, we need to be advertising here. You just need to go beyond all of that to the fact that what emotions are guiding my target audience, what how can I trigger a certain connection to my product. So those are the kinds of questions to ask.
I think that's really good. As marketers, as brand managers, sometimes we tend to go too big and we look at the bigger things. Oh, let's do this. Let's spend this much. And sometimes what really matters is it's the tiny details, as you mentioned.
Yep.
It's just a matter of changing the color
Yeah.
to match, the emotion that you want your consumers to feel.
Yeah.
It's about changing probably the sound. For example, when you go inside the store, maybe play a sound that's
Yeah.
a little bit more relaxing, that's a little bit more, fun to listen to. Or maybe when you're in the hospitality industry, maybe try to put a scent or a perfume that smells so good, your customers would want to stay. And it's the smallest details, the smallest things that really trigger the emotions and the decision making of a consumer. So
Yep.
that's really interesting. And thank you so much, Lohi, for your presentation. Really insightful. And I hope everyone
My
enjoyed that as
pleasure.
much as I did.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Thank you.
Bye.
This is all we got. Remember the revolution in our minds. This is all we got.
Lock me out of this life institution. I am angry and I am illusions. Yes, I hate, but it's not a solution. Try my best, but I'm just a human. Oh, we don't need to say we started. We don't need